I know what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do this. This may work, maybe it won't. We shall see. Oh, it would work so much better if I actually plugged the right thingy into the right thingy, wouldn't it? That helps. Someday, we will be able to do all of this wireless. And then we will be able to walk into a room. There we go. It's going to come up in a minute. Yes, there it is, right. And push the button, and these things will all happen without having to plug things in. But, so what I wanted to do was draw things together and look at the sort of discussion thread that we've had with all my typos as well as everybody else's. And so I just briefly wanted to draw things together, and I think the big thing about the discussion threads that we've had this week about the Jockers chapter, I had a question which occurred to me while I was looking at it. Does that chapter of Matthew Jocker's book stand okay on its own? Okay, I wasn't sure whether people needed to skim the previous chapters or not, which is why I put them up there as well. That's okay. That's important to know for future reference. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in the discussion. I have sort of notes on the iPad version of it, but it got going, didn't it?
We went to town last night.
That was. There's actually a word for that. It was a word which may apply, which is flow. When you get into that sort of space where work is actually going. There's a Hungarian psychologist called Mihail Csikszentmihalyi who's written about it. He's also written about creativity in the 1990s in systems, and then he went on to talk about flow in work, and he kind of fits into, he's from Harvard, and a lot of his work fits into some links with Howard Gardner's work on multiple intelligence theory. So that's where he fits into sort of learning and learning theories, which is interesting. But yes, you did get going, and that was awesome. And people were dragging in stuff from Alwyn Houghton, Dame Alwyn Houghton, who's now
somehow talking about gender and feminism, and it was very.
It was. One thought I had. Did you get a chance to read any of this, John? That's okay. It's pretty. You got a class on the playing pitch, did you? It's pretty, yeah, one question I have, one problem I have, and I might ask you to think about it, is how you bring it back and put out a hook for the people who look at this and are lost, to try and get a hook into this and come back in to respond to you. Because it is a bit ahead of everybody else. It may frighten some of the others off a bit, you know. But there's a lot of stuff in it that I thought was great. I love the way, I mean, and the whole talking about Norris in terms of cultural identification and culture, nationalism, and identity, which used to be a seminar years ago that Joe Lee used to teach. Ah, the master here, good. So it's, where was it? It's further up the page. Yes. I thought Norris was interesting for two reasons. One, the whole idea of culture, nationalism, and identity and ethnic groups, and what is your cultural group as distinct from your national group, and how you have subgroups. Particularly, you know, in the light of looking at, as we did in the witness statements and the census, we're looking at a particular group generation. Norris is an example of a different generation, so I thought that was interesting. It looks at the broader picture. The other thing I thought that was interesting was it's kind of like where several people picked up what Jockers said later on about arguing from a single case somewhere there, and about traditional history. I can't remember exactly where it was, but this is a classic example of where people make an argument out of a single case, you know, and I thought that was interesting because of that, that he kind of critiques the whole collection of stuff, because he says, look, if you look at this one case, this is very complicated, so therefore this shows you the limits of the close and distant reading stuff. And the stuff about genre, what did I, oh yeah, somebody, yeah, there was a long thing about genre and fanning and genre, and eventually I thought it came down to this question of whether or not what Jockers had to say about the way the Irish wrote and stage Irishness. And my question was, so is all this about that particular genre of literary production by that people, is it in fact a tactic to fit in? Did they adopt that mode of cultural expression as a way to make it easier for them to fit in and seem unthreatening, maybe? I don't know, in terms of cultural assimilation. I mean, that was one of the random thoughts and questions I had about it. Did I write stuff in other places? I did, yes. Now, hold on, before I get down to that. I underlined something about, it was about gender and about going, in other parts of the world, we're going back into the past. That must have been Danielle, it was. And I don't know, it just struck me as the way in which not maybe things don't progress at the same pace everywhere. So while we might draw a line through 1901, and one of the really interesting things having the 1901 and the US 1900 census is that you can see two parts of the world that maybe are at different times and look at them and go, okay, what's the differences? How do these represent different times? Or the US census, because there's such a huge expanse. One of the things, it's kind of sidebar, about the Irish and the American Midwest is, and one of the things about the Irish Americans and culture is that the famine, one of the results of the famine and Irish emigration to America was that within Ireland, you had less mobility prior to the famine. So when Irish people went to America, they suddenly in Boston or New York met up with Irish people from other parts of the country. Kerry people met up with Roscommon people whom they would not normally have met up with and ended up intermarrying. So you then had people suddenly acquired cousins in other parts of Ireland that they would not normally have had any contact with, which is an interesting thing in terms of the journey and the culture. And obviously, counties are very culturally distinctive. Try to have a conversation in Irish with the Donegal man in your woods. So suddenly you have this different transformation that happens. But the other thing, was something Sarah said about the blending of two types of history and understanding complex problems. I'll find it. I have scribbles here, I don't have scribbles there. Let me just not lose this. Where is it? It was late last night. Let me try to find it. No, it was before that. Oh, maybe. No, I'm lost. It must have been there somewhere in that one. Can't find it now. But the idea I have written as the marginal note I have here about using the two types of reading to better understand complex problems. I've written an abbreviation in the margin, which is VUCA, V-U-C-A. volatile, uncertain, complex, and adaptive, right? It comes from a completely different dimension, but it fits with the notion of complex problems. It's a way of describing the contemporary challenges of the contemporary world, and seeing it as a world where these are the characteristics. There's actually a whole bunch of US military doctrine now that incorporates it, and management doctrine, that the world is volatile, uncertain in context, sort of different to the old world where you used to be able to depend on things, complex, things are interconnected in a complicated way, and it's adaptive in that it changes frequently. Which is interesting because the whole close and distant reading thing, and the way that this better equips us to understand problems, I thought was kind of interesting in that might link with, that there's a linkage there between the two, between sort of, okay, close and distant reading allows historians to read historical sources in ways that we didn't do in the past, and therefore that equips historians, people who've done history, are therefore better equipped to deal with the complexity of the modern world. Does that make any sense? Okay, right, good. Does that make sense to you? I know you're nodding. Are you? Does that make sense to you? Yeah? Okay, cool. You brought in, you read Melody's one, didn't you? The markup one.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, I don't know how much I agree with it.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
I don't know. I know because she's saying, you know, when you're typing something, you have to engage more with the text, but I don't find that I do that. Like when we were typing up the reports, right? I didn't find that I was reading as I was typing. I was just typing it. I don't know, subconsciously maybe I'm still taking it in. I don't know. But I think for me to learn, I need to actually like read something and take notes, and I don't know if her approach towards that would help me. Right. Maybe other people it would. Well, yeah, that's an interesting question, because I thought that people would get more out of it, and that's the theory. Does that work for people reading when you were transcribing? Did you get more out of it? Run around the room.
You have to read it twice when as you read it and then as you type it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get it. Unless you're just kind of looking at them as words.
You could be doing that. Silent corner, stop hiding.
Mixture of both.
Yeah.
I do need to read it twice, but what I do is I would take a certain amount of information from it. So it starts a paragraph, ends a paragraph to kind of get a general narrative. Right. Then, but what I would have a tendency to do is that the middle part of the paragraph would just be completely blank to me the first time.
Yeah, I think I do that
the second time. Then I'll find something that actually collaborates what I'm already after putting down in notes. Yeah, which is kind of the way we're trained. We have an expectation that paragraphs will start and finish. Does that make? Do you do that as well, or do you do different? No, come on, you give her a chance.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to me. Sorry.
How does that? Which camp are you in the reading side? Did you get more out of it? How much did you get out of it on the transcription? Do you think? Or what do you think of Tomas?
Mixture. I think when you read, you kind of sort of subconsciously transcribe because you need to know it. But at the same time, it does force you to read through to make sure you're writing. For a transcription, you've got to make sure you're writing the right thing. So you're going to have to constantly read it to make sure you're right, so you won't notice stuff you may not have noticed.
Yeah, I don't know. I must explore it in more detail. And I suppose it fits in again with the whole close and distant reading. If you're doing distant reading based on technology, then you're just going to be reading the metadata and the headings and the stuff. And you're not necessarily, you're going to get a different picture. I don't know which is the most accurate.
Sometimes we tend in academia, like particularly when we're at this long now like that, it's actually almost passive reading we're doing. That if something stands out and jumps out at you, you're looking for a particular area. If you've got a mindset that you're looking for a particular piece of information, that piece of information you expect is going to jump out at you within the parameters of the field that you're reading. I mean, I did another module at one stage, and each week we had to do an analysis of a particular chapter of a book. Right. And, like, they were just a selection of essays, but each one made up chapters in the book, like, and we had to limit it to between 400 and 500 words. which meant like your first time reading over it, like you're just getting the general feel of what the author is trying to put down, but then you've got to narrow it down, you've got to pull the bits and pieces out of it, so you're effectively paraphrasing an essay into anything between 400 and 500 words. I can still be able to show that you've got the contextual meaning of what the author was trying to put forward, you know.
And then you see, the thing about research, traditional reading-based research, is that if you are interested in a topic and you go to a body of material because you have a question about that topic, then you're going to find stuff that relates to that topic, and maybe ignore the stuff that doesn't, which is the difference, I suppose, between Jockers and Fanning's reading of stuff. That Fanning found different things because he was interested in other stuff, whereas when Jockers ran some numbers on the data, he said, hang on a minute, there's a lot more people in Irish Americans in the Midwest and farther west writing a lot more than in the East, which Fanning didn't spot or get because he came from a different perspective and hit it with a different question. So it is interesting. I mean, it relates to how we look at information right across the board, and being conscious of how we read stuff and how we process things, you know, and how we analyze stuff, and how we make sense of things, and how we respond to the different cues in order to put things together. So, I mean, I think that's interesting in the way that it brings those together, and how we do this close and or distant reading. And also the whole question, and I made a comment on it somewhere on the forum, about the different standards of proof and the historical versus the legal, and how we generalize from cases. Because there's a certain set of sort of rules and principles for assessing historical evidence, which are mostly kind of common sense. But then there's the very strict legal rules of evidence, which are much tighter, even though traditional history tries to follow a kind of legalistic way of assessing evidence, and we think of documents as witnesses, and we interrogate the witnesses and we ask for them for bias. And this is where, again, distant reading is different to that, possibly, or introduces a new dimension to it. So that's those. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it sparked a huge discussion, which is, I had to read it a couple of times. Parts of it were hard going for me, catching up with. But that's there. So overall, where we are is that in terms of drawing this together, how do people feel about pulling all this together? Has anybody had a go at putting the portfolio together? And how is that going?
Just bits and pieces of what I'm doing, because I went back over the census stuff from the witness statements. And just so happened that the guy that I had, like, there's 5 people with his name of varying, 8 people of his name of varying ages, all around the same area, like between the ages of 8 and 75. Like, so I was trying to pigeonhole him, so I've narrowed down to 2.
Okay.
So he's one of the 2. So
he could be one of the 2, and then it's trying to corroborate.
Well, then actually, what I did was I actually started looking up some of the names of some of his contemporaries from the witness statements and see where they were age-wise, and said that might actually narrow it down to say that he was either 17 or 18. But the chap that I had was called Dennis Lorton, so because the address that he gives in his written statement is in Montanari, whereas his action was in Kilbritton area. So, you know, he obviously moved. And one of the Dennis Lortons I found was 18, working as a chemist's assistant in 1911, and the other fellow was a farmer's grandson.
So you'd really be doing the traditional historical thing of reading the witness statement and looking at what he says about his background.
There's very little on it, Mike.
Yeah, that's the problem. Very often they don't.
Family in it whatsoever. But he mentions a couple of lads continuously in it, and you're probably going across into Hales brothers.
Yeah.
So he mentions then those lads as contemporaries, and so I was able to find Sean and Thomas Hales.
Yes.
Sean and Tom Hales, he calls them in the census. They're John and Thomas Hales.
That's right.
The ages are appropriate, like 17 and 19. And they're in around the same area or the same Townsend.
They couldn't both have given witness statements because one of them didn't survive the Civil War.
Which the
Hales.
Well, no, I'm going to talk about Dennis Lorton mentioned.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking if they mentioned him, then you would be able to.
Dennis Lorton had mentioned the 2 Hales brothers because they would have been the same company.
Yeah.
Fine column. So I didn't go into, but I found
It's obviously more work than we want to do to have to, but the thing to do would be to go to their witness statements and backtrack to him, but that's more work than is necessary.
No, I know.
You know, so you don't have to restrain yourself. I know you want to read them all, but there's other things to be done. Kiri, how are you? Have you started putting it together yet?
Small bit.
Right. You haven't hit any problems yet, have you? You probably won't. You'll be all right. Sarah?
Grand, yeah, I have a good bit done, but I'm already at like 8,000 words.
That's not unusual.
Well, you see, if you're pasting stuff
Yes,
in.
but I guess it's without the, what you call it, the markup,
Yeah,
it's about 5,000.
okay. Would you send it to me and I'll have a look at it?
Yeah.
And it must be very close to done. Okay, before you.
Yeah, I just don't have the introduction and conclusion. to
Okay.
finish.
Keep them short, so,
Yeah.
and we'll have a look at it. Did you get a chance to start it, John? No? Okay, fair enough, not a problem. And the others, oh yeah, look at that, we're looking at, yeah, references to Jeremy Clarkson, and, yeah, okay. But,
Who's saying Malik? Is he a story?
obviously you're not in touch with contemporary culture.
Digital history, the course is called, Mike.
It's okay.
We've been heartbroken all week. We lose Jeremy
what's his name?
Clarkson,
This
we lose this Zane fella.
It provokes all sorts of.
Jeremy Clarkson wasn't Jimmy Savile, it'd be a different story if he got on the BBC.
It does lead to all sorts of speculations about social media and fame and notoriety, and because there is the link to the material that Jockers was writing about, which was musical and music today, and there's actually very interesting stuff done on Maura Cronin, did some stuff from Limerick on the transmission of news through popular ballads in the late 1700s and 1800s. As a means of transmitting news from places, so which is kind of different to transmitting news about popular balladeers.
That was an old IRA thing as well during the Civil War and the War of Independence, that there'd be an ambush tonight that a song written about tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah.
On Friday night.
Oh yeah, very definitely, yeah. So what I want to do, if I can find where I am here. I want to, actually I just want to stop that.